Hey, Slay Nation, it's your host, Heather, back with another episode of the So She Slays podcast. Now, I'm excited to have our next guest in the studio with us. We're going to be talking about some stuff that your girl has recently had an epiphany about, and it's been something that has been on my mind for a really long time. And I feel like it's really relevant to Slay Nation and what it is that you're going through as well, because of the fact, like, it's a weird time. I feel like in the world, in the economy, in the job market, so on and so forth, right? And I think a lot of us are in this mindset of like, I'm not enough. I need to find a life that's working for me. I need to redo this. Like, this is not working the way I thought it would be working. Well, Shoshanna Raven is our guest. She's here. She is an 8-figure life artist and a transformational coach. Now, we're going to get into this life artist thing because I have never heard somebody tell me that they're a life artist before. But if you want to take a step back and do the whole woo woo perspective, it is absolutely like, I mean, life is art, right? In a way. Anyways, she is also an author. The Limit Does Not Exist is her book. She has built a multi-million-dollar movement called Living Brave. She did it without paid ads. It's a whole freaking podcast. It's a whole community. It's a whole thing. So Shauna, thank you for joining us, but tell us all of the tea, all of the stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here. And, I think it's so great. It's like you can make your own rules. And when you realize that also the game of success that we are playing as entrepreneurs is completely different than the way that we were kind of taught to get to the next step in the school system or in the corporate system, where that's very much based on getting the permission of the authorities. Like if you think about an artist back in the day, it's like I have to basically win over the whoever owns the big companies, whoever owns the record label. I have to get permission for them. Like hopefully they like me enough to distribute my work. But what happened now is people like you and me, like anyone, has direct access to the market. So we have our ability to just distribute. And so it's completely changed the landscape. I call it like the new money millionaire economy because old money is like, okay, who do I know? I have the name, I have the trust fund. And basically it's like I have assets, that I have inherited. I'm kind of like, it's not even inherited versus not inherited. It's also what systems am I working inside of? Like systems that are still like playing by these old rules, or there's this whole system that's kind of running parallel to the old money system, which is like, oh, there are all these new kinds of businesses that are going straight to the consumer that the same rules don't apply. Like what used to maybe work would not work at all. Like instead, you kind of have to be edgy, you have to be provocative, like something that maybe the old money
Mhm.
system would look at and be like, oh my God, what are you doing? It's like you actually have to be edgy, not in a way of, you know, trying to be edgy, but in being truthful. Because
Authenticity is edgy.
yeah, of course. Like you have to be an uncomfortable truth. You have to present a narrative that is different to get attention because creators, entrepreneurs, people who are building new brands, new businesses, they're building income producing assets and new businesses through innovation. In the new money economy, it's all about like first of all, there's way less rules because it's newer. Like it doesn't follow the same rules because there aren't the gatekeepers, there aren't, the old companies, and you're going straight to the people. And it's like I can call it whatever I want. I don't have to have any kind of credential. I could literally make up, like I remember when I put out my podcast, I was like, what sounds like a cool pen name is Shoshanna Raven. Raven isn't even my last name. I was just like, that sounds fun. Like I would love to use the last name Raven. Like the name, I was like, there are really no rules in, the order you have to do it and what's the right way. And I think a lot of people, when you talk about artistry, it's just like, I think about life artists is okay, everyone's given the blank canvas of their day ahead of them. And life will dish you some pretty raw material, some days more raw than others, right? Some days a little bit of a mess, it looks like. You don't always get what you want. Right. There are people who are really into manifestation. I'm like, okay, how's like, yes, you can manifest. Yes, you can, try to be the match to what it is that you want. But inevitably, life doesn't give you what you want. Life sometimes gives you what you expect because what you expect, you kind of co create with your life. It
Yes.
always delivers. I choose to believe that it delivers what you need to grow, even if it's in weird wrapping. There's no mistakes, only misinterpretation. So I say, okay, if I believe that I am maybe co-creating with something greater than me, it can be God, it could be the universe, it could be plain luck. Like either way, it's not just me. Either
Yeah.
way, either I'm going to embrace what I've dealt what I've been dealt, or I'm going to be some kind of an artist. I'm going to say, I'm going to collaborate with whatever this force is. I'm going to decide to take the raw material of my life and build something that I'm proud of with it. And so when I looked at what do I really do? It was like, I think that's what I've been doing. That's what I love to do. I love the art of living a life that I'm really proud of having relationships I'm proud of being someone who I walk through the world and just my very existence gives others permission to want more for themselves. I want to be someone who is like a reminder to other people that life is listening to prayers. I want to be an answer to prayers. I want to be a solution for other people. I want to make my life something that feels like I'm saying thank you to the day. And that if I'm going to live this, I
Mm,
might as well live something that I find is like the most beautiful experience of my life. Like, why would I not? And so that's really what I just
yeah.
always to do. And I think that's really what coaching is. It's taking people from where they are to where they want to be and helping them kind of step into the highest level of themselves. And then doing that with entrepreneurs and with brands is a really cool thing because you're working with people who, when they change, when they grow, when they lead, they're going and impacting their team. They're going and impacting hundreds of people, thousands of people, millions of people. So I really like to work with creators and visionaries and people who have a vision to change the world, because the work that we do together goes and influences, a lot of people. But at the end of the day, it is not a science. Like if it was a science, you would just follow the steps, business, life, relationships, and we'd all have the same results. But it is more of an art form. It takes courage. It takes it takes gaining the skills of being an artist, but at the end of the day,
Mhm.
you improvise, you make it your own, you learn the art form, you learn the rules, and then you break them.
Yeah, for sure. And that's part of like, designing the life that you want. Like you said, being a life artist in that way. And it's so interesting to me that, like, I mean, what a perspective. What a whole perspective you just laid out. Because that is something I think a lot of us, so I have Slay Nation is made up of a lot of different people, but I know that there's people out there that are like, yes, totally. So, Shauna, I absolutely believe this. And like, I'm trying to figure it out and I'm trying to like piece it together. And then we have the other spectrum who's like, that sounds really amazing, so Shauna, but I got bills to pay, girl.
Yeah. I think that would be the most strategic thing to do if you had bills to pay, would be, okay, well, how am I going to rise to the plate of my life and make sure that I pay the bills? Like, would I like to say, well, I have bills to pay? That means that I have to be miserable. That means that I have to, act like a victim to my
Yeah.
circumstances. That means like you're not going to be able to find solutions. So when it is like I have bills to pay, then it's like, great, what's the story that we're living? How are we going to decide? Like, I believe in the infinite, resourceful, creative, imaginative, productive power of human beings. I mean, it's like my great grandfather got on a dead man's passport over in Turkey, and like it took him 2 years to get to Spanish Harlem, and he created a business with his bare hands, as an upholsterer, breathing life back into people's old couches. Like if he can, if you're the human spirit, if you want to do something, you will do it. Like I believe that we all, even if it sucks, even if you're like, oh my gosh, like I believe that we all have the ability to change our circumstances. I think that I don't want to live a life where I just feel like I'm a victim to my circumstances, because I know that I have changed my life. I've seen people
Mhm.
change their lives, and I've become obsessed with it, working with, tens of thousands of people. I kind of see that the main difference between people who live a life that feels like light and limitless and joyful, and it feels like I just want to be around this person, versus people who it feels like dense and heavy and there's always a problem and complaint, like another bill to pay. It's not their skill, it's not their circumstances. It starts with where they place their focus,
Yeah.
and where they place their focus is the unique vantage point that they have on their reality. And I always look at life artistry as like, it's focus, the focus that you bring, you're always paying attention. So you can't pay attention to everything at once. There's an infinite number of things, like a disco ball. Well, there's an
Yeah.
infinite number of ways you could look at this reality, and there's higher and lower quality attention. People tend to have really low quality attention right now because we're distracted. We're looking at our phones. We're 5 different places, right? Even listening to this podcast, you could be all of a sudden you're listening to something else, and some people are really locked in, and they could be locking in on, oh my God, what if this horrible thing happens? Anxiety, or they
Yeah.
could be in joyful anticipation of a future, or they could be right here, right now, present, right? But there's different quality attention, which most people miss. And then there's an energy that you're bringing. And people might think energy is woo woo, but energy is the thing that everyone can feel, but no one can
Yeah.
name. It's like you walk into a room and you just know, you're like, what is it about this person? I don't know. I don't like this vibe. Energy is, emotion, energy and motion. You're always feeling something, and you always feel it. You can actually choose how you're feeling when you learn how to exist not as a reaction to your external environment and other people, but you say, wait, I can set the standard in my life that other people rise to meet me in. I can actually choose that, yeah, this is hard, but I can have fun with it. I can bring a little ease into it. I don't have to resist it. I can roll my shoulders back. I can make a joke. Like I can decide, I call it be the chill rocket ship. Like you're always focusing on something, you're always bringing in energy, and you're always doing something about it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I can't magically take the bill away, but I do know that if you take your focus and your energy and your action, you say, well, I want to create a life where I'm resourced. I want to create a life where I change my reality and say, okay, what's the vision that you have for yourself? And then how would you match that with your focus, energy, and action? Who would you be today? Where would you be focused? What energy would you bring to the situation? Then what would you do about it? And that's how you change your life. It doesn't mean that you're always going to know what happens next or that life always gives you what you want, right? But it knows that you actually know who you are when life gives you the opposite, and that you can actually overcome hurdles and obstacles on your path just like everybody else. So I've just learned that those are the people who ends up changing their lives. It doesn't have to do with, their circumstances, how much success they've had, the certifications, the size of whatever they started with. It's just, okay, are you committed to your side of the equation, which is all you really have the ability to change, your focus, your energy, and your action. And then lastly, obviously environment, which is who you
Mm-hmm.
surround yourself with, or the podcast that you listen to, what you're brainwashing yourself with, right? And you become your environment, right? So you intentionally change your environment to match who you want to become. So that's what I would say is like, the reason that I stumbled into this work is like, I was once at a place where I thought my life was over. I love She Slays because my brand is all
Mm-hmm.
about shame slaying. And it started with slaying shame, where I felt like my life was absolutely over, that I was 24 and I felt like no one's ever going to love me. My life is over. I had already quit my job. I never really fit into like the
The
mainstream.
main girl you're speaking to, it's same. All right.
A lot
I've
of
never
us.
worked a 9 to 5. I don't know about that life.
Yeah, exactly. I worked
Although
in
sometimes it does seem easier. Like when you're an entrepreneur and you're getting in your low points and you're just like, oh my
well,
gosh.
it is easier in some ways. It is easier, however, it's capped. So there's always like there's like an upside to everything.
Mm,
There's no solutions, only trade-offs. So it's like, okay, if
true.
you want um stability or certainty, like with certainty comes boredom. With certainty, you're limited, right? This is like if we look at investment strategy, right? It's like, okay, well, if you want to invest in this like bond, it is going to pay you 2%, 4%, I don't know what the percent is, right? But if you want
Hmm.
to invest in this new company, right, it might be a riskier investment, right? It's not backed by any banks or
Okay.
anything, but it might go to zero or it might
Hmm.
go to 2 million. Like you might get your $100,000 investment might go to 2 million. So like whenever there's a high upside, there's more risk. But with risk is just uncertainty. But uncertainty is where fear lives, but it's also where excitement lives. It's also where limitlessness lives. It's also where possibility lives. And so if people want to feel alive, they want to feel possibility, but they're like going towards, I want it to feel certain, but I also want an extraordinary, unreasonable, magical life, but I also want to do the practical, predictable, reasonable thing. It's like, again, unreasonable energy, unreasonable focus, unreasonable energy, unreasonable action leads to unreasonable results. But if you're taking ordinary action, if you have ordinary focus, you're talking about what everybody else is talking about, you're getting caught up in drama loops, you're just existing as a reaction to your environment with your energy, you're not being intentional at all, you're not, intentionally changing your energy and focusing on your emotions, and it's like you're not going to create anything really unreasonable. You're definitely not going to change the bills that you have. So I think that would be, yeah, just an example of how you can
But I
use
think that
life
that's such
artistry.
a but that's a solid example. That's a solid
Yeah.
example. And a lot of people I think a lot of it just seems so unattainable in some aspects of things. So if we are speaking to someone who is experiencing this type of unreasonable like actions, reactions, and trying to dive into life,
Yeah.
wanting all of these like amazing things, but they're just like, I know how I operate and I don't necessarily operate in uncertainty that well. Like what then?
Yeah, well, I think it's like, well, I go to the gym and I can't pick up the weights.
Mm,
But we would see that you would just keep going to the gym and you would just keep picking up the
trying.
weights. You'd look at the 100-pound weight and be like, but that's not me. But like you will live out whatever you believe about yourself. So you are, if you say, well, I'm not that kind of person, like I used to tell people I was so inconsistent, but I was telling people that. And so I live my life like someone who's an inconsistent person. Right. And so it took, I believe, like getting skin in the game and deciding like if you actually want to change something, then getting really uncomfortable and making a commitment. And I would, okay, put in the gym membership, hire the personal trainer. Right. But like for me, I used to say I'm inconsistent. I'm really hot and cold. I like would miss calls all the time, but it's because first I didn't set up my environment and I would be that kind of person. And I wasn't really like committed to changing. But I now see, just like a lot of people who are interested in personal growth or development can see, like, oh, I'm a totally different person than I was 3 years ago. So it's about having a growth mindset. And I think there are certain areas of our life where we have a fixed mindset, and our fixed mindset shows in fixed results. So if you're like, well, this is just who I am, this is just what happens to me, well, that's why you haven't changed, because you have that story about yourself. But there are other areas of your life where you're like, of course I can get better at this. And then you like do the things and you change. But there are stories where you're like, oh, this can't change. Like, and I don't know why. There's something that
Yeah.
happened where you just told yourself, this can't be different for me. And it's often social conditioning, societal conditioning, something that someone told you. And yeah, I think like it can feel heavy, it can feel daunting, like you were talking about. But like, I don't know if we want to talk about like my journey kind of
Yeah.
into living brave, but when I said I'd quit my job, and I just got to a point where I was like, I was working at KPMG in New York City, and I felt like a shell of myself. I'm like 22. I feel like this can't be this pinnacle of success. Like
You're
I'm
like, this is not it.
working for the weekend. I'm like drinking XL coffees. I'm like addicted to Adderall at one point. I'm just like, who am I? Like, I don't like this person. And I had kind of stumbled across, like, I learned about companies like Airbnb and Uber. And I just thought like, oh, these startups are so cool. Like I probably would have worked for one of those companies if anyone got back to me, but they didn't. And I was like, oh my God, like I want to work at like, what was that company? We Work. Like I was like so excited
Mhm.
about all these things. And it was so different than like old accounting world. And I ended up just being like, you know what? I would rather be poor and free than wake up and fall
Mhm.
this 10 years down the road and reconcile that I like traded these years of my life for a paycheck. And to me, I think it's just like, what are you more scared of? At the end of the day, you just need to have better fears. Like, do I fear looking back on my life in 20 years being like, oh, I didn't do anything that I really wanted to do in the name of safety? I feel like that's really risky. I feel like it's really risky to not know what's possible for me in my life, to not see the world, to not know what I'm capable of, to
Mhm.
conversation with myself. That scared me more. So I quit my job, took a one-way ticket to India, which is what you do when you're 20 something on a verge of
You're
spiritual
like,
awakening.
I'm on my eat, pray, love journey.
And I like got my yoga certification, and I started doing like some writing on the side. I worked for Investopedia and like did some, like, I lived this double life. Like, okay, I'm going to write some finance blogs and get paid like $50 an article that would pay for the hostels and everything like that. And I felt like I had found this location freedom and this time freedom, but I didn't have that freedom of like expression of my purpose, like waking up every
Mm.
day, actually being excited about what I was working on. It still felt like, okay, I have this freedom in life, but I don't have it in my work. And it wasn't until I was in Nepal and I was working at a kids center in Bhaktapur. It's this medieval city, and it was the middle of Biscuit Jatra, Nepali New Year, and it's all crazy and sirens and chaos. And I am shivering under a pile of blankets in the heat of the spring. And I don't know what's wrong with me. I have a 104 fever, nerve pain down my legs. I'm like terrified because I've taken $1 antibiotics. They're not working, right? I'm just like, grab some antibiotics. You're like a traveler. That's what you do. And I'm like slung to the back of a motorbike and taken to the hospital, where this doctor tells me women sometimes just get stressed. And I get back to the hostel and I'm pissed, which is, what you do when you're scared, but you don't know what to do. And I feel this intuition, and I open up my phone, and I'm like, my hands are shaking as I'm typing. And in seconds, like my whole world, all this fake conditional confidence, like I'm traveling the world. Look at these posts with my punny cat. Everything, like my whole confidence just shattered. And in that moment, I had those thoughts: my life is over. No one's going to love me. I found all these anonymous forums full of pain, full of isolation and heartbreak and shame, was really what it was. And I had herpes, which is
Mm.
just was like my worst fear. And I really felt like, yeah, it's the end of my life. And I felt like a victim. I felt like this horrible thing happened to me. People say it's really bad. It must be bad. And now I feel bad. right? So that's or people
Mm,
say it's bad, it must be bad. Now I feel bad. And now I live my life like someone who had a bad thing happen to me,
yeah.
right? I know that I don't know your listeners, but I do know that all of us have one thing in common. It's that we will make the story we have about ourselves true. So I thought no one's going to love me and my life is over. So I lived my life like that was true, right? I made this story about me true. And I kind of lived as like a shell of myself. And I
Mm,
got to this place where it was just really dark, where I felt like I was running from myself. Like I was not treating myself right. Like I didn't have any boundaries in relationships, right? I was living like someone who had a bad thing happen to her until like I just got to this place of exhaustion. I remember crying myself to sleep one night and I heard this voice that was like, what are you doing? And it sounds crazy, but a lot of people have this moment of just
yeah.
they have a moment of awareness. And I was like you can keep doing this, you can keep running from yourself, and you can do this as long as you want, like no one's going to make you wrong for it, or you know what to do. It's like, what? It's like you can become your own best friend again. I was like, what the hell is that? Like I don't even know what that looks like, to be my own best friend
Yeah.
again.
I mean,
I
so many people say that, right? Like it's not unheard of.
Right. And I was like, okay, become your own best friend again. And it was crazy. Like that night, I just decided the next day, what people talk about quantum leaping, like overnight change. It wasn't money, it wasn't anything like that. But I was like, okay, I am going to cut out, like, I am going to totally change my life, like overnight. I just got to rock bottom. And I was like, I stopped all this toxic substances, all of the people that I was hanging out with. I just was like, I signed up for half marathon. I've never run before. I bought a tent.
You're like, I'm
And
doing
I'm
it.
gonna go, I'm gonna work on this whole become your own best friend thing again. And felt like I'm holding this trauma. And trauma, I love how Dr. Benjamin Hardy explains trauma as anything from your past that you still believe happened to you, not for you. And so I was like, well, maybe. And we now know that there's no trauma that can't be turned into post traumatic growth. So
Yeah.
something that doesn't rob you of your life, but that actually gives you meaning, purpose, and strength, right? But I realized, oh, I'm carrying a lot of pain. I'm carrying like trauma, and maybe I can heal this pain that I'm carrying. And so I didn't try to like go deep into a healing journey. I actually felt like maybe the first step is just be kind to myself and love myself and go on an adventure, fall in love with myself again. I don't think I thought about it like that, but I was just like, I just need to do something unpredictable. And if you want to change your life, that's a really good place to start. I was like, I'm going to do something unpredictable. Right. I was like, I'm going to do this marathon. I'm going to travel. I went to all these music yoga festivals. I didn't know anyone. Like, I was just like, I am going to go out there. And this
Live.
crazy thing happened is I started like really enjoying myself. I started like falling in love with these places and new people and the art. And it was like there was space created from all this density I was feeling. And, when I first told my story about this horrible, highly stigmatized STI I had, I would approach the victim and I would approach it and there would be sobs and, snot
Yeah.
everywhere. And this really long monologue about this horrible thing that happened to me. And at the end of this sumo wrestling with shame, I'd see on the face across from me, 1 out of 4 times, same here. In fact, some of
Mm,
my closest people had herpes. Like I kid you not, 1 in 4 New Yorkers has HSV too.
wow.
Oral herpes is two in
Yeah.
3 people, right? And so
Yeah.
I would go through this whole thing, and people would just like breeze past it, like it was no big deal. And I was like, how rude. I mean, how interesting. Right? I was like, and then this crazier thing happened, which was not only was this a common thing, but that it was like when I opened up, it gave people this crazy magical permission to open up about whatever shame that they were carrying. And it was like, whether it was their colorful past or their family history or this thing that they were ashamed of, that they did, that they weren't proud of, that they weren't pretty enough, accomplished enough, skinny enough. It was like people were dying to get the shame off their chest. And I watched in real time how just in the presence of someone who had listened without judgment, their energy would lift, like they changed, like their shoulders would roll back, and it was like it'd start with this wincing, like, oh, the part of them was like bracing for impact as they just told the truth about themselves. And then they noticed they were standing there in the aftermath of being vulnerable, unscathed. And I just saw how it fundamentally changed people. And I started to get obsessed with like, why do we walk around with these heavy weights? Like, what happens when we're honest with each other? So, this is how I started living brave, because the more that I saw how shame was playing out in other people's lives, the more mine started to look like this boring fact about my sexual health that had nothing to do with my worth as a human being. And I was feeling kind of like, wow, okay, maybe there was shame already there. Maybe if this is so common, like there's more important things to tell the world than like my STI stuff.
Mhm.
It's like, I'm tired of this shame sitting on my dreams, my voice, my real personality, just waiting until get to the good part of life. And so I got really impassioned by this conversation. I was like, what if this like garbage bag of unfortunate circumstances could turn into like something actually like the surprise?
Good.
Maybe this happened for me. Like, I don't know. I'm gonna just experiment. And so I started experimenting with energy. I didn't know it was energy, but I was like, what if I do this crazy thing? And instead of approaching this like a victim, right? And I
Yeah.
don't know if you use the word victim, but I know that can be triggering for people, but like this bad thing that happened, what if I am just going to take myself on an experiment where I tell people about this? So I'd be at a yoga festival and someone would be like, can I have a sip of your water? And I'd be like, yeah, sure. I have herpes. Don't worry. You won't get it. And it was like people's shock would turn into laughter and it would like relax everyone. It's like my playfulness gave everyone permission to relax. And when I approached
Mm,
it like with a passion, like, yeah, I'm actually really passionate about breaking stigma around this, or even with a playfulness or
yeah.
flirtiness or even tenderness, like vulnerability, people
Yeah.
would get really interested. And it was actually, I was writing for this like spiritual magazine at the time.
Uh-huh.
And I saw the founder of this magazine out in the wild. And I was so nervous, sweating, like my hands were shaking, my face was shaking. I was like, no, I'm going to walk up to him. And I walk up to him and I'm like, I have a story about shame slang because I was already on this project. And he looked at me and he's like, not to be weird, but having herpes kind of makes you cooler. And I was like, what the fuck is going on?
You're
And
like,
I
no one has ever.
feel like the magnetism of what I'm so passionate about now, someone who owns who they are and where they're at and presents exactly that to the world. And I
Yeah.
saw, oh, the rarest thing on earth is not status, it's not authority, it's not your bank account, it's not confidence, it's something else. It's this kind of raw, brave truth, like a kind of wealth that exudes from the inside out. And a woman who loves and accepts herself is kind of this rare gift. And you can actually enjoy life. You can experience what like pleasure, which
Yeah.
is the party of shame slang, which is where desire is born from, that pursuit of more from a space of wholeness, not need, not that ambitious person issue of like, it's never enough. Like, oh my God, how good can it get? Like, yes, I've
Yeah.
been all along. Now let's build something incredible. And so I started experiencing that for myself. And it felt like I had found the cure to cancer, like in my life, it was like, oh, I just
Yeah.
can't shut up about this. And so I knew I wanted to go public about it because I thought if someone was talking about this, like it could save people's lives. Like actually, because people get so deep and dark in their stuff. Like I
Yeah.
know my story could change someone's life, save someone's life. And you know what? I didn't go out to start a business. I was like, I want to express myself. I want to make art, like
So
because
the
it's a
business
gift.
came second.
Yeah, because it's a gift. It's a reward. It's a
Yeah.
relief of being human. Like we want to make stuff. I wanted to have cool conversations with people. I wanted to talk about this thing that had changed my life. Like I wanted to inspire people. I think at the end of the day, the people who that's what they're after, first and foremost, and you come back to that, that's an energy that is a clean energy that people can feel. And you come back to service and you're not in this like angsty kind of needy place. You go,
Yeah.
I love what I'm doing. This is the reward of being human. I want to connect. I want to express myself. I want to like for some people it's like I just want to make stuff that I love. For some people it's like I want to connect with people and serve people, but it's like the thing beyond the money. And so I decided that before I went public about this, I like pitched the Moth. I tried to be on Women's Health magazine. I tried to get someone else to carry my story for me until I was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do this on my own. Right. But I was like, hey, I need to go on. If I'm gonna lead something called Living Brave, I'm gonna be crazy enough to do that. I've got to have some practice being crazy brave. If
Yeah.
I want if anyone's going to take this seriously, especially myself, I've got to do that, right? I've got to actually live my message bigger than I've seen anyone live it before. And when I talk about a movement and a brand, it's like, what's your message? And go live that. And then you'll never be worried about what to post or your content or your marketing strategy. Just go live it and document it. And then that's how you build an attraction based brand,
Yeah.
right? So I was like, okay, I am going to tell every guy that I have had a crush on, gone on a date with, like in the past 2 years, about the scariest thing I could think of. And if I can meet them in person, better, because that terrifies me, right? But if
I'm
I,
like, you're giving me anxiety just talking about this
I was
right
like, but if
now.
I had,
I'm like, that
I was,
is
I'm going to go
not
public,
I. So
right?
Shauna, not I.
But I
Okay.
was
Like,
I mean, I knew that it was like I had this feeling, I had this calling. I knew that I had to share my story. I knew that I was feeling, right? And it didn't start. That wasn't my first thought. I'm going to go public about it. My first thing was, what if I just play with, like, I started to enjoy my life again. I stopped sabotaging, and a little space opened up that goes, maybe this horrible, painful thing, I can just see what happens if I approach it in a new way. And through that, it led me to this place of, okay, now I'm going to do the craziest thing, which is I'm going to feel like I'm going to throw up telling this person my truth. Right. And of course, the person I didn't want to tell, the person I wanted to leave out of the article, leave out of the story, is the one person I was dishonest with who I didn't tell about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm on my way there. I'm standing in the living room, like, I'm going to throw up. And I sit down and I tell him the truth. And I think he's going to throw me out. And he's like, that makes sense. We didn't communicate. And hey, I want to own up about this other thing. And then he gives me a hug, like a real hug. And he texts me on the way home, like, I love you. How can I support you? And I'm like, I feel high from telling the truth. It was like every time I shared the truth, I would feel lighter and lighter and lighter. And I just didn't want it to stop. Like, I told now my ex, who I dated for 3 years, I called him up. We hadn't talked in like 6 months. He was so inspired. He wanted to make me a website. I was like, you're telling me I was the only one holding myself back the whole time. Just like I saw those other people, and I could
Ooh.
clearly see that what they were feeling so shameful about, I could see that it didn't need to hold them back. I couldn't believe that people were holding on to these things so tightly. And I could see that doesn't need to hold them back, right? But my thing, it wasn't until like I really had that experience, because ultimately at the end of the day, you can shift your focus, you can shift your energy, you can do the mindset work, you can go and talk to people about it, but you have to just do the thing that scares you. You have to find evidence for a new story, right? Like at the end of the day, that's how you reprogram yourself. And so it wasn't until I did the scariest thing and I saw I'm still here. And this is what creates success. Like people don't think about how could shame slaying and vulnerability and all of that have to do with success, but it's because the characteristic of a successful person is someone who's running towards their dreams. And the issue with a lot of people is that their dreams are the same directions as their fears. And so when you still have wounds, when you still have shame, your strategy for moving through the world is avoidance based. When you're carrying around painful, heavy stories, you don't want to be rejected, you don't want to be misunderstood. You don't want to feel that pain that you already feel inside. And so you live a very small life because you're avoiding the past and the present,
Yeah.
right? That time you weren't good enough, that you feel too big, too small, otherwise inadequate, and you still believe these things about yourself. And so we go, well, but what if I look like an idiot? What if they don't like me? What if it doesn't work? Right. And we're kind of reaffirming that worst case scenario. But when you're shameless, when you say, I'm at peace with who I am and at peace with my life and who I've been, and I'm proud of myself. And look, there's nothing to find out about me. This is the truth of who I am. And I'm not perfect, but like I'm trying my best. And here's what I care about in the world. Like I felt completely liberated. It's a process every single day.
Yeah.
But it's like someone like that, there's nothing to hide. There's nothing to protect. So you can beeline towards your dreams, because the people who create success, it's like you're willing to just fail and fail and fail and fail. And you don't see it as failure. You see it as learning and growth. And when you feel like you failed, you don't feel like a failure. And when you make a mistake, you don't feel like you're a mistake. And, like when someone doesn't like you, you see that they're just it's not actually,
Not you the ability to take things personally is I think, to kind of wrap up exactly what you just said, it's like there's themes that I'm seeing, right? It's like it's not always about you to have to take it so dang personally all the freaking time, right? And it's also too, it's having the curiosity, having the play, all of that kind of stuff when approaching life. I think life can be too serious, and
Mm,
that, I think, really takes away from people's joy out of it, right? And it's just like it drains you, and it's so easily done. Like sometimes it's just done and you don't even realize it's being done, and then you get a glimmer of something, you're like, well, shit, when did that happen? Like, how did I get here? Right? And so it's one of those types of situations, and it's very easy to lose the whimsiness of life when you get older, because adulting is a freaking thing. But at the same time too, what I'm also hearing is that you got the hell out of your own way.
yeah, absolutely. And that's really what my book is about. It's the limit does not exist. It's like how do we break past these like perceived limits? And the biggest limit is ourselves. Like the biggest limit is the way that we get in our own way. And you can get out of your own way. You can rewrite your story. You can be a life artist. You can see that you do have agency. You can learn how to focus on your side of the equation. You can be someone who you love to be around. You can be your own best friend. You can be the best boss that you've ever had. You can say, I can be a burnt out, stressed out boss, or I can be the best boss I ever had. I can be kind. I can be loving. I can celebrate. I can be I can focus on all of these things. And after that, the book is about then after we let circumstances get in our way, as you're building anything in life,
Mhm.
your relationship, business, like things happen that you did not plan for, right? And like, how do you
Yeah.
manage unexpected circumstances and all of that? But it's still like the inner game, even when you're dealing with circumstances. And I think past that, once people get past themselves, um, what really holds, like, I think my successful clients back, like the beginners are stuck in
Yeah.
themselves. But
Yeah.
after that, it's really, so it's you is the biggest limit, then it's circumstances, then it's people. And I
Mhm.
think that's where a lot of successful women end up getting stuck, is like people and understanding how to navigate people issues and people
Mm.
problems and not exist as a reaction to other people and appease and kind of not understanding how to influence, instead of like convincing and forcing and pressuring people. Like, how do I actually lead myself so that other people can follow? And how do I navigate like tricky dynamics, people maybe not liking me, like, as you grow and you're in leadership, like people really misunderstanding you and really hard things that happen. I think like that people thing is something that holds a lot of people back. And then after that, the book is about the four limits. The fourth limit is rules. So this is kind of what you were talking about in the beginning of,
Mhm.
the certain way to do things. Like, I remember when I
Yeah.
started my business, I had an old childhood friend reach out and she was so mad that I was doing what I was doing and that it was working. It was like, I went to the proper school, I got the proper credentials, like,
I
and
did what I was supposed to.
and you can't do this, right? Like, it was almost like, what? Like, I'm so mad, right? And it was interesting because I was like, whoa, I never set out to compete with her. I was like, huh, like I just wanted the best for her and her journey and I was paving my way. But it just really showed me like, yeah, there's two, that what we were talking about in the beginning, like there's the kind of old way to do things and there's a new way to do things. And especially when you've been like indoctrinated in the school system and you've been taught, okay,
Yeah.
if you get a good grade, you'll get to the next level, and if you get a good grade, then you're going to get a raise, right? And this is all going to happen. But life isn't like that outside of these obedience driven systems. Like, life isn't predictable, it's not linear. It isn't, if you do all these steps you're going to get
Yeah.
this grade. It isn't it isn't certain like that. Like, the only way you're going to get that is if, you work for someone else. Like you said, sometimes it feels easier for people. If those are people's values, if they're willing to have that trade-off, then they get to absolutely do that. But I think for a lot of people, like, I like looking at Tony Robbins' 6 human needs. It's certainty, uncertainty, what is it? Love and connection, growth, contribution, and significance. And it's
Mhm.
like, if you're looking at your business as a source of certainty, like, you're going to really fail, right? So you have to find certainty somewhere in your life. Like, it's
Yeah.
not, especially
Yeah.
in your first few years. So it's like, yeah, of course, if you're looking for that, you'd rather be an employee. So it's for people who can find certainty somewhere else in their lives, right? And so for me, a lot of my work about the inner game and who you are is like, instead of outsourcing my safety to
Mhm.
how other people see me and this identity that I have, a lot of people have a lot of struggles throughout life because their identity shifts, or who am I anymore? It's like, I have certainty, right? And something really deep within myself, right? And who I know that I am, in certainty and safety within who I know myself to be, not just when everything's going great, but when life gives me the opposite, through how I've actually built a reputation with myself through following through on things. And that's something that's built, like your relationship with yourself. And that's where my certainty comes from. And so when we have that, whether that hasn't always been developed in people's households, like a place that's actually instilled confidence or instilled
Mhm.
ability to show kids, hey, you can fail, you can try things, you can color outside the lines and you're going to be okay. And you don't need to, that's not your certainty. And how you know you're going to be accepted in the world is if you do everything right. You have to deprogram that from yourself. But if you build certainty within yourself, because it is a human need in some kind of things and relationships in your life and your faith or whatever it is, then you can play, these games
You
where
can
it's,
play the different games of life.
yeah, business. Yeah, I think, business is so cool because it's so limitless in what you can create. But again, like, the limitless results in your limitless self exists in the unknown, exists in possibility. And for a lot of people, they feel very uncomfortable in that space. But people
Mhm.
call it excitement, people call it, anticipation, people call it anxiety, but it's just a feeling. And that's why I called my movement Living Brave, not Living Confident, because
Yeah.
confident is who you are when you have results, right? Confident is
Yeah.
when you know you can do something again and again and again with your eyes closed.
Brave's
But
taking a chance.
bravery, yeah, bravery is like, I'm not certain. I don't know if it was just a fluke. Like if, of
Yeah,
course,
I don't know if it's gonna work or not, but we'll see.
right?
We're gonna
But
figure it out.
I'm unwilling to wonder what if. And I think
For
like
sure.
that's the biggest thing in life is like realizing like, are you unwilling to wonder what if? And then, make
Can you
that choice.
can you handle that? That is something like it's always stuck with me with my therapist too before we wrap up this interview. This one thing has always stuck with me. It's like because I think a lot of people are like, what if, right? We relate to that statement so much. And so I was talking to a therapist once and I was talking about like if I explore this one channel, what if X, Y, and Z, all sorts of negative outcomes, right? And then she kind of stops and she looks at me and she goes, I'm not going to tell you, like, what if this happens and what if that happens. I'm going to sit here and tell you we're going to scoot back even more. And she's like, I have more people that sit on this couch that wonder, what if, and
Mm,
never actually find out and then turn around and regret it than I ever have people who say, what if they try it and then
mm,
whatever happens, happens.
so good.
So I was like, I living with regret is not something that I'm gonna be able to like sustain in myself. I already know that. So
Absolutely. That's such a beautiful perspective. I think it's a really good practice for people to do to like visualize themselves. I think that's like a common thing in the personal development space because it works is like visualize yourself, at 80 years old, looking back on your life. And it kind of
Mhm.
puts everything into context, but that's such a normal thing when we are seeking safety, especially as you said, like in a world that things maybe don't seem certain. There's fear, maybe your life is changing and you're looking for certainty somewhere. So how do we do that? How do we ease that feeling? Is that a lot of people try to solve 20 steps ahead a problem that isn't even here.
Yeah.
And when you're 20 steps ahead from where you are, trying to solve a problem that doesn't even exist yet, you're not going to really win at whatever game that you're playing, right? So
Yeah.
it's like if I'm even driving a car and I'm trying to be 20 miles ahead going, what if there's a stop sign? What if that really go? Like, you're going to crash, and
Yeah.
then you're going to say, oh, look, I'm not worthy. Look, I crashed. I'm not good enough. But it's like in life, like, it's like, am I good enough to be in the game? Should I be in the game? But if you really are going for like, I'm going for champion level results, like I have to play the game. I can't be,
You
am I
got
good
it.
enough to be? I do this? It's like I've got to just like actually get like I got to get in the game and I've got to give it my all and I've got to go for it rather
Mm.
than just staying on the sidelines. Ooh, and we do that because we want certainty, right? But what
Mhm.
life is emergent. Growth is emergent. It doesn't happen through a 20 being 30 steps ahead.
Yeah.
I always talk about this like I believe in magic. And what I mean by magic is that
Mhm.
always need to know how to do it to do it. What I mean is I literally in 2024, March of 2024, magic became undeniable in my life where I started growing literally with no manual, with no idea how to
Mhm.
do it. Nothing but God-given instinctual womanly powers. I started growing another human being from my own body. And all this crazy shit started to happen. I was like, what? Like all these crazy symptoms. I was like, am I good? Right. And of course, just
Yeah.
all it needed. Some other people told me they had done it, and that was enough to go on this
Mhm.
roller coaster ride, bringing another human being into the world. And I always laugh. I grew a penis without knowing how. Okay, but like, imagine. It's like imagine to do the most important. Like I believe one of the, like you're bringing another life into the world. Like imagine I had waited for the plan to make
Mhm.
sure I wouldn't mess it up. Like to the 5 step
Yeah.
plan. And it just really led me to wonder how many of us are spending our lives 20 steps ahead solving for a problem that is like literally
Doesn't
shaping.
even exist yet.
No, it doesn't exist. But the truth is, I didn't need to figure it out. I didn't actually have to
Yeah.
even think about it to do it. Like you don't need to understand everything to do it. Like
Yeah.
can actually bring life in the world. Like that's irrefutable. Like
Yeah.
without even thinking about it, without even knowing how you're doing it and you're doing it, you're not going to
Mhm.
figure it out. You don't have to be as you're trying to figure it out. It's configuring you. Like it literally was shaping me into the person that I
Yeah.
needed to become to raise a person. And I'm trying to figure it out and to have this strangle on it. It's like, what if you just relax a little? What if you just let whatever you call it, God, grace, life come in like
Yeah.
with a little mystery. And for me, like opening myself back up to this mystery of the life that we're living in, no matter how like people call it, you don't
Yeah.
have to have crystals or consider yourself spiritual to just say, it doesn't take a long time to kind of marvel at the mystery of life, which is that we live on a rock floating in outer space with a molten core, home to the pigs and
Yeah. You
pyramids
you
of
can
Egypt.
definitely like zoom out and get that picture. I mean,
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
you're like, And I think I need to like understand everything and be like, but what if I take this step and then in 5 steps it's just like, blah, blah, blah. It's like you are like, what is going on? And how has the magic been so beaten out of us? Like, yeah, let's bring a little bit of that playful wonder
Let's
and
bring
excitement back
it
into the
back.
front.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we wrap up, I have about a few rapid fire questions. And
Cool.
some people say that these are not rapid fire questions, but I feel like I feel like they would be rapid fire questions. So we're going to say it. Okay. So the first one is the belief that held you back the longest in one sentence.
Belief that hold me back the longest, shame. So I'd say like I'm not worthy.
Okay. Most overrated advice women get about building wealth.
You need to have a clear and specific vision.
Mm.
I just
What
don't.
does you're like, you don't have to.
Yeah, I don't know who I'm going to be tomorrow. The highest level match of you plus this moment every day, and life will dish you something beyond your mind's capacity to dream on a vision board.
Oh, love. What does living brave look like on a random Tuesday for you?
Living brave on a random Tuesday. What I love is just a mix of things in life. Like I could be on stage, carrying my 1-year-old, telling it like we have this crazy dance party with Jedi lights and do a talk on a scalable sales engine, or it could be like I'm in Puerto Rico at the beach club. I have no calls for the day, and I have dinner with friends.
There you go. The woman who needs to hear your work the most, describe her in 3 words.
3 words. I think. Hmm. 3 words. Okay. One needs to hear my work the most. So I think she is like a creative, multi-passionate unicorn.
Okay, a character of your life, or a chapter of your life you almost didn't survive, but made you who you are.
Pregnancy.
Wow. You know what? I'm sure that's so freaking common.
It
Okay,
really not.
and then finish this sentence. The limit does not exist
Because when you give yourself so fully to this moment, it'll flood in at a level that you can't even keep up with. You won't even know how to get outside of this moment. When you give yourself so fully with your focus, energy, and action, you will become one with the miracle of this moment. And you will be a living, breathing, walking reminder to everyone, wherever you go, that 1 + 1 sometimes equals the limit does not exist.
oh, love. Shoshana, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you, follow you, all the things?
At Shoshanna_Raven on Instagram, and ShoshanaRaven.com is a great place to
Get
get.
started.
It does not exist is available on Spotify, Audible, Amazon. You can get it. Also, I'm always sharing on my Instagram what we have going on. But the limit does not exist. The Living Brave podcast, ShoshanaRaven.com, and at Shoshana_Raven on Instagram. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was such a great conversation. And Slay Nation, as always, I hope this resonated with you. I hope this inspired you. It gave me a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of, reminders to kind of just go after the things that you want for yourself. And as always, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, we'll catch you later.